spatter brush I created just from a black and white image. Lasciamo prossimo! This week I'm going to be showing you a really powerful texture painting workflow, and this one is built right into Blender. Uchu Paint. Jodimo! Last week we took a look at how concept artist Ian McHugh builds up layers and layers of color to create his mesmerizing 2D images. With Uchu Paint, we've got the advantage of being able to do something very similar, but in 3D. To get painting, I just select my model, click Quick Uchu Paint Node Setup, New Layer, Image, switch to Texture Paint mode, grab a brush, get painting. That is so fast compared to the standard Blender rigmarole when it comes to texture painting. But there's much more we can do in Uchu Paint. We can easily make as many paint layers as we like, but what's more? Uchu Paint is a PBR tool, so each individual layer can have multiple channels within it. So you can actually paint in metalness, roughness, even normals, so that you can really create the illusion of cavities or bumps, things like cracks, grooves, rivets, stuff like that. Now, just a reminder, we are texture painting here, so your model will have to be UV unwrapped. Uchu Paint can have a go at unwrapping for you with this handy little Add Simple UVs button. It really works pretty well, but you're probably best off doing a proper unwrap yourself. So again, I just click Quick Uchu Paint Node Setup. I'll just leave these defaults as they are. You'll notice that it will handily switch us into material preview mode. So what have we got here? You can see color, metallic, and so on. I've got this little color chip. We can play with these sliders. This can act as my base layer. I'm going to try and make this like the steel that a boat hull would be made of. So I can crank up the metallic value to 1. Now, mild steel is actually pretty dark and pretty rough, as you can see here in this reference image. So I'll dial in the color and the roughness. Now, I want a layer of imperfection, of variation. Layer is the operative word here. It's what Uchu Paint is all about. this little plus here, and that opens this big menu. I'm going to paint in the variation that I want, so I'll go for new image, and that'll give me a new blank canvas. Get this handy box where I can give it a name, say steel variation. You can also set the resolution. It's got these handy presets. I'll go for 2K. I can also decide how this will be blended over my base layer here, but for now I'll just leave it at the default mix, which is the equivalent of the normal blending mode in something like Photoshop. Now, as we saw, if I'm in texture paint mode, I can already start painting. I'm going to use this spatter brush I created just from a black and white image. I have the stroke set to anchored, so I can just click and drag and set the size and rotation. And I will hover over the base layer color chip and tap Ctrl C just to copy that color. And then hover over the brush color chip over there at the top left and paste it in there. And now I can just get painting. Right, so this is the beginning of my layer stack. I can switch it on and off here. I can change its opacity. And handy feature to see exactly the colors I'm creating. just this layer, I can toggle this preview mode. I get rid of all the lighting, I just see the flat color. Now I'm painting onto a transparent image layer here, so we see this alpha checker pattern. Underneath the layer stack, I have a bunch of drop downs where I can manipulate the selected layer in detail. First is the image we're currently painting, and we can, for example, swap that out for another image here if we want, or even replace it altogether with something procedural, like, for example, we've got noise here, or let's try Voronoi. Or I could just use a solid color. Anyway, switch back to the steel variation image. And then underneath the image settings are the vector or mapping options. Obviously, for us to be able to paint predictably, we need to use the UVs, but there are other options here for different types of layers, different use cases. And then underneath the mapping, I have the channel options, and this is where you can access some of the crazy power of UchuPaint. By default, only the color channel will be enabled, but I've decided I also want a bit of bump to show in this layer, just to make the surface a bit uneven, perhaps slightly corroded. So I'll enable the bump channel too. This can have a pretty strong effect, so you may need to dial it right down so it's just above 0, say 0.01 or something. Right, back up in the color channel, let's set this to multiply over the steel base layer, so we're interacting a bit more with that base layer. I think that's now a wee bit dark and saturated, so back under the layer options, we can add in a modifier. Click on the little spanner icon. I'm going to go for hue saturation, and I want to reduce the saturation a bit. I'd also like to edit the contrast, knock it back a little bit. So again, click on that wrench, modifier, brightness contrast, and I'll just dial that contrast down a bit. Back up in the layer stack, remember we can also turn down the intensity of the layer as a whole. Great thing about working with UchuPaint, it's all non-destructive. I can come back and tweak stuff as much as I like. Right, let's add some rust over this steel. I want to click the little plus for a new layer. Again, I'll go for that first option, new image. I can give it a name right away, rust. Set the resolution, 2K. Okay, just to demonstrate something, I'm going to turn down the roughness on our base layer. Back in the rust layer, I'll just use the fill tool, make sure it's set to mix, and I'll choose a rusty brown color. Look what happens. It's inheriting its metalness and roughness from the layers beneath. That's how UchuPaint works. Unless you specify a specific channel for a layer, in this case metalness and roughness, it'll just come through from the layers below. I don't want the rust to look metallic, of course, so I'll enable the metallic channel to give me control over the metalness in this layer. By default, UchuPaint uses the layer color to define the influence of a channel. In this case, the layer color is that dark brown that I chose, and that's close to black, so we can't really see any metalness anyway, but I want more control, so I'll use custom value here. And now I can completely switch that I chose of a channel, use the metalness, so the layer case, use specify layer, I'll just resolution 2K. Okay, just to demonstrate something, I'm going to turn down the roughness on our base layer. Back in the rust layer, I'll just use the fill tool. Make sure it's set to mix, and I'll choose a rusty brown color. Look what happens. It's inheriting its metalness and roughness from the layers beneath. That's how Uchu Paint works. Unless you specify a specific channel for a layer, in this case metalness and roughness, it'll just come through from the layers below. I don't want the rust to look metallic, of course, so I'll enable the metallic channel to give me control over the metalness in this layer. By default, Uchu Paint uses the layer color to define the influence of a channel. In this case, the layer color is that dark brown that I chose, and that's close to black, so we can't really see any metalness anyway, but I want more control, so I'll use custom value here. And now I can completely switch off metalness for this layer just by setting it to 0. I also want the rust to be rough, so I'll enable the roughness channel. Again, by default, it's using the layer color to set the roughness. And again, the darker the color, the less a channel will be visible. Instead, I'll again choose custom value and have that set to the maximum of 1. Finally, I want a grainy, rusty texture, so I'll enable the bump channel. I'll choose custom data here and I'll select noise. Now, by default, this is going to be way too big for what I need. I want to simulate the tiny grains that rust is made from. So I'll increase the scale value to something huge, say 500, which counterintuitively makes it smaller. I'll increase the I'll choose custom, so I'll enable the bump channel. I'll choose custom data here and I'll select noise. Now, by default, this is going to be way too big for what I need. I want to simulate the tiny grains that rust is made from. So I'll increase the scale value to something huge, say 500, which counterintuitively makes it smaller. As we've seen, the normal channel does need a light touch, so I'll turn the height down to something tiny, like 0.01. But of course, rust forms unevenly, so now I've got the layer properties set up the way I want them. I'll again use the fill tool, but this time right click and under this blend menu select erase alpha and just click to clear that layer. And to avoid confusion, I'll again right click and switch back to the standard mix mode. If I decide I like a color, I can add it to a palette in the tool. And to avoid, just click to select erase alpha and just click to clear that layer. And to avoid confusion, I'll again right click and switch back to the standard mix mode. If I decide I like a color, I can add it to a palette in the tool settings. New, click the little plus, and there we are, a handy swatch that I can reuse. Now, to make the rust patchy, I'm going to switch between some more brushes that I set up, again using some grungy textures. I'll just speed this bit up. Now it's time to slap some layers of paint around over the top of these base layers. Let's say a layer of dark tealy bluey green has been painted over a lighter color. So very Ian McHugh-like, I'll make a new layer, new image, call it paint pale, and I'll set up its metallic and roughness values. You can put some bump in here as well. You can simulate the orange peel look of real paint. And I'm going to rapidly wash some color in there with some pretty sloppy brushwork. I'll do the same again for the darker paint over the top. Set up a new layer, give it a name, and so on. Laskavo prosimo, друзі мої. Last week was all about Laskavo prosimo, друзі мої. Last week was all about the fantastic texture painting tool which is built into Blender as an add-on, Uchu Paint. In that tutorial, I used several texture brushes which I had set up myself. And I had a question from a certain 70 Watt, hello 70 Watt if you're watching, about how I did that. How did I set those brushes up? Bit busy with a job this week, but I think I just about have time for a real quick tutorial this week. So here goes. Hodimo. Once you're in texture paint mode, you'll see this brush asset library at the bottom of your layout. Or you can go the traditional route and click at the top left to open the brush menu. Laskavo over that, the default paint at the top left to open the brush menu. I'm after the default painting brush, this paint hard brush. I'm going to hover over that, right click, duplicate, and this menu will pop up where you can name it. I'm going to call this star 1. Now in the tool settings we can see that I've now got that brush selected. That's over in the properties menu. Look there, you can see star 1. I'm going to scroll down to the texture section of these brush settings, click new, and then click this little button to open the texture settings. Now I want to import a texture, so I'll click open and navigate to the one I want. Then I want to make sure I'm only using the alpha channel. So switch to non on color. And then I need color. And then I need to make sure that Blender will only paint the white portion of this image. So under alpha, make sure alpha is checked on, and then this subsetting calculate alpha. And that will just make sure that any black parts are transparent in my texture. And then switch back to the tool settings. And here it's handy to set a preview image. So click this little drop down on the right here, and I want this edit preview image option. And I'm going to navigate back to that same image, in fact. Now, I don't want to paint as I would with an ordinary brush, you know, just dip your brush in the paint and smear it across the surface. I want to use this particular brush as a sort of a stamp instead. And the way that I set that up, as I mentioned in the last video, is up in the stroke settings across the top of your viewport. I will switch from the default space to anchored. Let's try anchored. Finally, I'll just make sure I haven't got symmetry switched on down in the tool settings at the very bottom. Okay, so now when I click and drag, I can set the scale and the rotation of my brush. Actually, better yet in this case, because I want this to be quite graphic and quite controlled, I could use drag dot under my stroke settings. And that will enable me to place this star graphic really quite precisely. Of course, F to set the size. I can also change the rotation if I decide, and that will enable drag dot under my stroke settings, and that will enable me to place this star graphic really quite precisely. Of course, F to set the size. I can also change the rotation if I like, before I even draw anything. And I would use the Control F shortcut, get a little preview, and I can drag my mouse to change the angle. I'll escape out of that because I do want it to be at this angle. Okay, so there you have it. I can make a really fairly precise sort of stencil stamp image, but you may find that you want to change the fall off of your brush. I don't know if you can see, but the tips of this star are looking a little bit faded. There's a bit of fall off going on there, and I want this graphic to stay sharp right to the tips, right to the points of the star. So I'll just undo that last stroke, and I'm going to change the fall off to constant up at the top there. Try that again. Okay, that's more what I'm after. Of course, if you were using one of the grunge brushes, such as I used last week, I'll just show you one of those. Now here, I wouldn't necessarily want a sharp fall off. I wouldn't particularly need to have a sharp image all the way to the edge of my brush. So I would probably stick that to soft under the fall off options, or softer. Okay, so if you're watching 70 watt, hope that was useful. As ever, thanks for watching, and do zustриči! 3D from Zero makes tutorials and tips about 3D software. If you're into 3D, or you'd like to be, check out my free course on 3dfromzero.com, and there are some paid courses there too. Thanks for watching.